The way you
Yeah.
want to live your life is mastered by your own self.
How to hypnotize social media, AI, and yourself to experience your optimum fitness. Believe it or not, you can actually hypnotize AI and social media just as much as you can hypnotize yourself in order for at least those three things, the AI, social media, which are connected, and yourself, your own mind, to be able to experience opulent, optimum fitness, health, and wellness. And I'm going to get through this as quickly as possible because it's really important. I'm going to get through this as quickly as possible because it's important. It's simple to understand. Everybody already knows this because you have experience with it from using social media. And because you use social media, you're already self-hypnotizing yourself, and you're also hypnotizing the AI, which is the algorithm. Here's what I mean by that. So first of all, my name is Hakeem Ali Bokus Alexander. I have a degree in clinical hypnosis from the Hypnosis Motivation Institute in Tarzana, California. If you want to look up more about that amazing school, you can look them up online at hypnosis.edu. That's hypnosis.edu. Okay, so most people already know about online. So let's look at it from a fun perspective, right? The way that conspiracy theorists talk about it, which is that my device is listening to me, the AI is listening to me, and that's why these things that I never even took a picture of or searched for before, it's showing me, and so on and so forth, right? So Gary Vaynerchuk, who goes by Gary V, VaynerMedia, talks about how in his new book, which is Day Trading Attention, talks about how basically the social media, the algorithms and everything have changed, and the way to get attention online has changed. It used to be one of the reasons why people are still obsessed with what marketers would call now, at least mature, successful marketers would call vanity metrics, right? Which before those vanity metrics actually worked, because the vanity metrics went along with the old school ways of advertising, which was, basically like a shotgun blast. If you can buy space on a television show because people were forced to watch it, especially many years ago, then what would happen is you'd have a captive audience because people want to watch the show and they don't want to miss it, so they'll usually sit there in front of the television or the radio or whatever in order so they don't miss their show. And so you could buy advertisement, shotgun it, it gets into millions of homes, and the hope is, the idea is that a percentage of those people will be influenced enough by the advertisement, especially if they see it enough times, to go out and buy that product. So when the internet came along, the same thing happened, where basically the more followers and the more friends and the more likes and everything like that and views you had, it was the same thing, right? That's why people were so obsessed with having more friends and more followers and all this and that, because the more people that were following them, a percentage of those people, would be able to see that. So let's just say, for example, if you have 100 friends, right, or 100 followers, and the chances that 10% of them will see something, well, then you got 10 people to see. So 1,000 followers or friends, that's 100 now, it's 10% of that, and so on and so forth, right? So you keep 10,000, then 1,000 is that, right? 100,000, then 10,000, right? So on and so forth. So 1,000,000, then 100,000. So that's why people wanted to get more and more followers, and why those metrics that we call now vanity metrics mattered more back then. what Gary Vee teaches and what I've also understood is that now it's the algorithm, right? You think that, and it has to do, of course, there are bots, right? There are the pixels and those things that when you go to different sites they tag along, right? And that's why sometimes you can opt out of certain things on the line, right? This site uses cookies, right? So you got cookies, bots, and pixels, and all those other things like that, right? Now there is an influence, there is an effect of those things. Those things are in play, but the way that social media and the internet has matured over time now is that now they're feeding you more of what you're already paying attention to. So the more you look at things, like let me give you a personal example, right? So my feed is filled with business trainings, like people like Gary Vaynerchuk, like Alex Catani, like there's people like, those are the only two that are coming to my mind right now. Although there are a lot more, but right now I've been focusing a lot on looking at Gary Vaynerchuk's videos. So basically I get videos that I see from huge business people, business owners, entrepreneurs. There's another guy who's been popping up on my feeds lately, and I don't know why I don't remember his name right now, but he also built a huge company. It'll come to my mind right now, but it's actually not important. I want to stay on track here. But the thing is that so my feed, right? So that's what I see. I see marketing and business talks and videos and sometimes trainings and things like that, and then I get a whole bunch of advertisements for all these online marketers trying to sell me more tools to build my business, right? And the other thing I see is I see a lot of science and physics videos and things like that, because that's another interest and another thing that I look at. Other things that I see are martial arts, usually martial arts schools and short tutorials for judo, capoeira, and Muay Thai usually. And then there's like some of the bigger stuff, like the famous MMA, of course, like UFC, and then my favorite is One Championship. So I see a lot of that stuff, basically, but mostly One Championship, and I think I'm even following them on Facebook, right? And so then a lot of heavy metal stuff, usually death metal, metalcore, and progressive post-hardcore stuff like that. So, bands in that ilk, like I Am Abomination and Ocean's 8 Alaska, and then a lot of old school death metal like Suffocation and Obituary and Benediction, stuff like that. And then some acoustic music stuff like that I'll get in my feed and everything like that. And then there I'll see some poetry stuff and some lyrical things like that. And then I'll see fitness people, where like people with muscles, and then people dancing sometimes. And then there's a whole subsection where all of those things that I just mentioned, right? Business people, physics and science, martial arts and music, like heavy metal music and stuff like that, and then muscle people, right? And then a lot of those are skewed towards females and women that I find attractive, right? Because that's what I'm looking at. That's what catches my attention online, right? So I get fed more of that. I get fed, physics and science stuff, and then the tendency towards ones that have women being the presenters. And then if they're women that I find attractive, because my eyeballs tend to stay on it more, and especially if it's good content, because you can be good looking, but if you're just spouting some nonsense that or doesn't make sense to me, then I'm gonna move away, just like everybody else, right? So then the same thing happens all the way down the line. Whether it's martial arts stuff, I'll look at women in martial arts. If it's heavy metal, then it's heavy metal, women in heavy metal. If it's business, same thing. So all that stuff gets skewed in those things, because that's what I'm looking at. So, and it follows me around everywhere I go online. So this is what I mean by how you can hypnotize social media and the AI for your benefit. And the benefit that I'm specifically talking about here is opulent fitness, optimum, like really the best fitness you can get. And how people talk about living your best life or the best version of you, all that stuff like that. But I'm talking about the real authentic meaning of that, which is that you actually are feeding in your mind. Like a saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. Well, I also like to add on top of that treasure in, treasure out. Like I like to change it for a little bit of the positive, for the affirmative, right? Treasure in, treasure out. So the more things that you're looking at that have to do with your interest, that's what's going to show up on your feed. And because of that, it's a self-reinforcing loop, okay? And that's how you hypnotize yourself. So there's an easy hack to that. And I think that by now you're following along, but let me just sum it up here for you. The more things that you look at and pay attention to, the more that the AI algorithms, right, and social media and different things are going to feed those same things back to you, because that is what you're interested in. And just as I mentioned earlier, I get a lot of advertisements for like a bunch of finance and business videos and things like that, trying to sell me tools to build my business. And so that's what's going to happen to you, the things that you're feeding. So if you're seeing stuff that makes you angry or makes you sad, that's because you're angry and you're sad, right? And that's not all originally me. I just heard Gary Vee saying something like that recently on a talk that he was giving. He was doing some kind of conference where there was a bunch of people coming up. I don't even remember what it is. I watch so much stuff that I really don't take the time to even look at the title of what it is or what it's called or anything like that. But I do know that it's Gary Vaynerchuk, and I would suggest that anybody who wants to build a business or have an online presence of any kind, look at Gary Vaynerchuk stuff. Gary V, VaynerMedia, the guy, I've been following him for years. I haven't applied everything that he said, but now that I've been doing a lot more of it, I've been seeing things changing. And so, and it's for the better, because he's a guy who talks about authenticity, just talks about being yourself. If you have anything of value, you share that. And that's why I'm sharing this, because the thing that I know and that I have to offer is, and so one of the things that, for example, I'll be targeting down the future, right, is I'm going to be saying things like how successful men 44 to 55 years old can hypnotize social media, artificial intelligence, and themselves to experience their optimum opulent fitness, health, and wellness, right? So I'll say that'll be how the message will be couched, simply because even though I know that this message is very universal, it's in the marketing business, and when you have a business, it's not the best thing to do, because there's a saying that goes something like, if you try to sell to everybody, you're going to sell to nobody, right? So you can't just shotgun blast. That old school method doesn't work. You have to focus. And even though things can be universal for a lot of people, every time I put a message out, even though I might be saying the same thing, I have to put the title and talk specifically to those people. Right now, this is very general, because I feel like this kind of message here, a lot of people would like to hear. I think that it's interesting, but again, Gary Vaynerchuk and others will tell you, hey, look, if you're just putting out stuff there that's interesting to you, that's selfish, but you got to think about who you're talking to, and that is how you're going to get more of the engagement. And so this may or may not fall on a lot of people. I think it is, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be true. And so my message here, once again, is that you can hypnotize the algorithm, AI, social media, and yourself for your optimum fitness, health, and wellness. And again, summing that up, how do you do that is basically because the way things are working now, it's catching up with actually how our human brains work. And not all of it might be altruistic from the companies, right? It's just so happens that the way that we operate is playing into the business structure, right? So the more things that you're looking at, the more you're going to be fed what you're looking at, okay? And so if you want things that are going to help your life to more show up on your feed, then you just keep looking at that stuff and swipe away or block or mute things that aren't helping to uplift you. And you got to become really good at that. Like, I've become very intentional about, if I see something, or if I start finding myself what they call doom scrolling on social media and going down a pathway that, even though things might be entertaining, I stay away from that escapism, because I realize that instead of trying to escape from the stress of building a business or doing the things that I need to be doing that are going to actually help me, instead I'm just taking action on it by learning the things and treasure in, treasure out, right? By taking in the things that are going to actually help me. So I'm filtering. I've become a filtering machine, and I'm only looking at the things that are going to help me instead of hinder me, right? So instead of escaping from the problem, I'm facing the problem by learning more about it and how to deal with it, and then applying those things that I learn as quickly as possible, deploying and knocking those problems out of my life, even because you know what, more of them are going to come. And so that's all I got to keep doing. Life is all about solving problems for yourself and for other people. So again, that is really basically it right there, is that you've got to filter what is coming in, because that is what you're going to be putting out. And so it's interesting because as a clinical hypnotist, as a master hypnotist, I've seen how this really lines up with actually how our brains and minds work. And this is actually a really good hack right here, because we can set it up so that we're actually learning more on autopilot and growing more on autopilot, as long as we're very conscious and aware about filtering what we're allowing in, because we could start getting all these things that are going to uplift us. Like, right, for example, I might be getting these things about how to build a business, and things about how to stay fit, and things about the music I'm going to create and the art and so on and so forth. And then something else might slip in and might start taking me down a rabbit hole outside of there. But if I stop it in its tracks and get back on track, then I'll be fine. So every once in a while we have to do a little bit of house cleaning, right? But as long as we're diligent about that, we're going to be fine. Let me check my time.
The way you want to live your life is mastered by your own self.
Minutes, almost 16 minutes. Okay, so now again, I'm gonna summarize and also talk about something else here. So I was saying that as a clinical hypnotist, I've seen how this is actually how we work as human beings. Exactly that process that I just talked about. That sometimes we can really be on track with what we're feeding into ourselves, our self-talk and everything like that. And then one little thing takes us off track and we start getting distracted by it, like escapism, right? And then we might get lost if we don't catch it, right? We just find ourselves drifting, dwelling on negative things, or just getting caught up in stupid stuff that doesn't really matter. It's not going to help us build our life, build our health, build our business, earn more money, actually take care of our problems. We start, and next thing you know, there's like 20 hours are gone, and you've binge watched whatever, and you've learned and done nothing, right? That the same thing that can happen online, that's exactly what's been happening offline in life with people. And so this right here is a lesson that the technology is caught up in such a way where it actually is mimicking. It's really like a neural network. It's mimicking the way we think and playing off the way that we think, because the system is built. And I'm saying it knows, right? That's a little conspiracy theory-ish, right? But I'm just using this terminology because I think a lot of people can relate to that. But see, it knows that if it can trick you and get you off into lost in those things in that algorithm, it can sell you all kinds of stuff and get you caught up into thinking, fear of missing out and comparing yourself to others and keeping up with the Joneses and people with the Lambos and the jets, and or somebody has more money than you, or a better car than you, or a better house than you, or all this other stuff like that. And then it starts making you feel angry and sad, and you get caught up in stuff that's really not important to you. Same thing happens in life offline, right? IRL, in real life, offline, as it does online. And so, but now you can actually hypnotize, which is another term that I'm using from the perspective of a clinical hypnotist. But what engineers would call this, right? They would say this training a large language model. They're saying training an AI model, right? You train the AI. You train the AI. You train the algorithm. And the way, again, summary, the way that you train it is by continually filtering and being very intentionally selective about what you consume on the internet, on social media, and in general. And the more you intentionally choose and direct and keep reining in and focusing and filtering on those things that you want, the more you're going to be fed that. And it'll be a self-fulfilling, self-reinforcing loop that will continue to help you grow. This is what's happening to me. This is something that I've been attempting to explain to people for years and years and years. This is actually what we attempt to do as clinical hypnotists with our clients, is to get them to continue to reinforce and build a loop of the kind of thoughts that they want to think, and filter out and push away the things that they don't want to. And you actually don't even need to discard the things that don't work for you. There's a saying from Bruce Lee that says, take what works for you and discard the rest. But even Occam's razor makes it simpler, right? It says that which is done with less is done in vain with more, right? But both of those things is, you can easily say, instead of saying take what works for you and discard the rest, or what can be done with less is done in vain with more, you can simply just say take what works for you. And take what works for you, do more with less, period. Because when you're focusing on what works for you, just the same way as, imagine if you had a cup full of some kind of slime or disgusting crap inside of it, right? And if you stuck a little hose inside of there and it was pumping clear, clean water into it just a little bit at a time, eventually that sludge or whatever, an example you could probably use is like dirt, right? And eventually the cup will start overflowing, the dirt will turn into mud, and then it'll start overflowing on the sides, and then eventually the more that water keeps going in there, all the dirt will spill out. It'll even wash off the sides of the glass, and next thing you know, all that will be left is flowing, clear, clean water. So that's the example of doing what works for you. The more you filter in and only allow that clean, clear water in, those clean, clear thoughts, the pure of heart shall see, right? The more you only filter and allow those things in, the more everything in the world, whether it's online or offline. Online, it's the algorithms, it's the artificial intelligence and social media and the internet. That stuff will be fed back to you. And then as a human, offline, your reticular activating system and your senses will start seeing the opportunities that line up with those things that you need to be seeing in order to go towards your goal. And this is how the human mind works, and the internet and the algorithms with social media and online are starting to mimic that. So that's it. That is how you can hypnotize and or train social media, artificial intelligence, right? The algorithms to help you to achieve your goals, specifically if your goal is to experience more opulent, optimum health, fitness, and wellness, right? Or as I was saying, how you can experience your optimum fitness, health, and wellness, right? And all you have to do is be very aware, very intentional, very selective about how you filter the things that are coming in, and keep doing that. Just keep doing it over and over and over again. It sometimes feels difficult. It sometimes feels daunting sometimes, especially there's so many things that are vying for your attention. But the more you work on that and the more you focus on it, the better the outcome will be. So once again, that is how you can hypnotize social media, artificial intelligence, and yourself to experience your opulent, optimum fitness, health, and wellness. I'm Hakeem Ali Bokus Alexander, and the next time I talk about this, I'm aiming with having the goal of it being more succinct. The more I talk about these things, the more I'm able to articulate them. They're ideas that have been on my mind for a long time, but sometimes I have to find ways to gather my thoughts, because even though I'm practicing them, so I'm really a good practitioner, it's sometimes difficult to get it out of my head because it's part of my subconscious being. And to get those things into my conscious mind and then turn them into, they're already thoughts and their behaviors, then I got to turn them into words and then and actually speak them out to you. All right, until next time, please do your best, stay well.
where you are to live your life is mastered by yourself.